Welcome back to The Doctor is In with Dr. Nadia Sabeh. I'm Dana Swadan, Dr. Sabeh's producer. This episode is part of our What Plants Crave series, where Dr. Sabeh speaks with growers, researchers, and other experts in controlled environment agriculture to get their insights about the direction of the industry and, of course, what it is exactly that plants crave. On today's episode, we're speaking to Steve Squaglia of Amplified Farms. Steve Squaglia put his 20 years of cannabis industry experience to use as the co-founder of Amplified Farms, Cultivated California, and most recently, Friendo Flower. His daily tasks involve designing, building, and generating operations for cultivation facilities and harvesting relationships with industry specialists. He has utilized his background as a general contractor to work with SMUD, a local utility company, on designing new facilities with LED lighting, embarking on the forefront of a revolutionary idea that will undoubtedly change the future of cultivation. Squaglia's deep passion and dedication to the cannabis industry are reflected in Amplified's impeccable track record in the most highly regulated market, and in their consistent recognition and validation by peers in and outside of the industry. Squaglia will continue to be driven by his undying love for the community that he serves and his immovable belief in what he does. Thank you for listening.
All right. Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Nadia Sabeh from Dr. Greenhouse, and this is our podcast series, What Plants Crave. We are talking to you today from the Big Sexy Brewing Company in Sacramento, California. And here with me is my guest, Steve Squaglia, cannabis enthusiast and grower here in Sacramento for a long time. Steve, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you about the cannabis plant, what it craves and what you love about it and why you got into it. Before we get into all that though, tell us about yourself, tell us about what you do here. I know that you have a lot of businesses going on, you've been cultivating for a long time. Yeah, just give us a little bio.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me again. I guess it all started when I was a little bit younger and became like really fascinated with cannabis in itself. Just the plant was my kind of my first introduction to it. I was fortunate enough to grow up a little bit around some cannabis cultivation, and then really just kind of fell in love with the whole process. It was not exactly legal when we started, but it was always a passion of mine to be involved in it. And you know, I just held on for so long and lobbied and prayed that it would go legal and or give us an avenue. When medical happened, gave us an avenue to get involved in it and then really take it, you know, legitimate business like we are today, which has been awesome. So. Yeah, I grew up in Sacramento, so we're not like farmers out here, but what we were like urban farmers, you know? Yeah. So I was also a general contractor, so being a general contractor and having to basically grow indoors was kind of a good combination at that time. I learned a lot about electrical, a lot about, you know, how to build little grows at that time. Did that for a lot, like really through college and, you know, my early 20s. And then we got into some medical cannabis in Sacramento. Sacramento was one of the earlier cities in California to adopt a medical ordinance. I think it was like number 3. There was like only 3 cities that had really been okay with it. So a group that was
that
involved,
back in like 1996, late 90s?
It was early mid 2000s. So that's when Sacramento allowed like the first dispensaries, and they weren't really allowed. You literally would have to go get an application for like a miscellaneous business. Some people were doing things related to growing, like flower business or something, like a florist. They would get whatever business license they could, and you would go and get a license, and you could go to the city, get a license, and you technically at that time could open a cannabis dispensary. So we got so we got into that. Then the city became really savvy of that process and shut it down when they got to about 30. Then we basically got our license, went through the whole processing thing, and what was nice was it allowed us to focus on our commercial cultivation skills. Being a dispensary owner in Sacramento allowed us to do cultivation at a small commercial level for this dispensary, right? And it was great. It was like 2008, I believe, and we're able to start like sharpening our skills and learn what not to do and spend money we shouldn't have spent on equipment we shouldn't have bought, all that good stuff. So then basically I've taken it to now today, commercial cultivators here in Sacramento have like a wholesale brand that we sell a lot of wholesale flower to a lot of other brands. Part of the co-founder of the Amplified Farms brand here in Sacramento with a really great group of guys, some cultivators that have been working in Sacramento for 20 plus years.
Which, I mean, Amplified is one of like some cannabis cups, right?
Yeah, we have.
That's
actually.
awesome.
We got probably half a dozen accolades in the cannabis, cup world and a few runner-ups, I guess, or something. Yeah, but it's really good. What's done at Amplified Flower is just really, I don't want to say, it's just really handheld the whole way through,
Okay.
That's some old school techniques as well, which I think brings that little special something to cannabis, which you can't quite get in the industrial realm.
What's the hand holding that you do at sort of the boutique level of growing? How does it differ?
Yeah, I think it's a lot about it. It's just like looking at every plant every day and being able to say something like, I don't like the way this is going, or seeing something that you can maybe enhance about it. You're looking at your root zone, obviously, understanding and feeling the root zone with some data helps to just get that a little bit of more individual love to that plant. And that's something you just don't get on a commercial level, really, greenhouse level. You're gonna get all really good, high quality if you know what you're doing, but there's something special about like ripping off certain petioles and whatever, and making a little bit more light for this plant that maybe you weren't gonna get at that other level, almost like a bonsai tree, right?
Right. Yeah, that's got to be a lot easier at a smaller scale than a really big room. How can you get your eyes on every single plant in a 6,000 or 10,000 square foot room? I can't even imagine the labor intensity of that, or the attention that would take. I'll just say that that's something that I really appreciate about cannabis growers specifically, is that I feel like the people who are cultivating cannabis really love the plant, and that they're paying attention to the plant, that they want to nurture that plant and bring out the best of it, whatever that is, a color, a taste, a smell, all the good things that you don't necessarily see at commercial scale agriculture. And obviously, cannabis is becoming larger, more money's coming in, and it's becoming more commercial and large scale. How do you feel about that? I mean, I know that some of your newer facilities have bigger rooms, maybe not quite as big of scale as some of the 100,000 square foot facilities that we're starting to see, or larger. How do you compete with some of those bigger growers? Are you concerned about that, or do you feel like you guys produce such a high quality product that they're sort of on the periphery and aren't really competition to you?
So I will answer your last question first. As far as competition goes, there's so much information out there. There's so many talented growers. There's better architects, designers, engineers. There's access to people that you could never have 10 years ago. So now you can build facilities and you can manage grows. You can tap into different data analyzing resources for substrate, for environment, for anything you want. That the standard of cannabis is going to become just higher in general. Like, we're never going to be able to say we have better product than the next guy, because that's all going to, I believe that's just all leveling out, really. Okay. It's going to take a little longer for some groups to get there, and I'm not saying we're there. We still learn every day, but that's just part of the accessibility and the legitimacy of cannabis now. We're just finding that it's, a lot of people have been wanting to get into the business, and whether it's an ancillary business or if it's directly in the business, but engineers and accountants and architects and everybody else is bringing all their knowledge of the industry, and just and then you have the meter group that's bringing data to the and all these other groups that are bringing data from substrate and environment, and have just been collecting it forever, and agronomists now that have tissue samples from everywhere for the last 3 or 4 years, really, and that's just a lot of data. So I just think it's going to standardize as people associate. People that decide not to associate, that want to say they have a secret sauce, I think is going to, like, that's really where you're going to start getting lapped. You might lose time and money.
You mean the people who are not working with others? Is that what you mean? That they're going to get lapped?
Yeah, I think there's so much association, or so much information out there through association, that if, like, the more people want to get together, the more we can just level up, like, the playing field of cannabis in general. IPM techniques, it really is about business survival, right? Like, I want every other cultivator to survive around here, because we all become solid businesses. We all end up develop associations where we can lobby and promote better tax rates and better overall business climate for our individual businesses.
Help legitimize the business that you're doing.
Yeah, that's definitely been happening. Now I feel like we really need to just associate so we can come together, like, set some standards. I mean, if all the businesses in Sacramento, cannabis businesses in Sacramento, got together right now and associated and lobbied the city, we'd be probably one of the biggest influencers in Sacramento, the capital of California. No doubt. There's just, we're, I believe, right, the latest stat I read, we have 6,200 jobs in the region. Okay, so that's a little bit outside, but directly influenced. All the money goes back to Sacramento, really, in a way. It's tax-wise, all those. But 6,200 jobs in the region, over 10,000 jobs, that reach, like, with an ancillary, a one-off, like engineers or accountants and things like that. Right. So you have all these other influence businesses. So, and the projections on that are growing pretty impressively.
That's really amazing, because I feel like, we're talking obviously to cannabis growers, but we're also talking to other indoor growers of other crops. And one of the biggest benefits that's touted frequently is the economic potential of having urban farming, having indoor farming in greenhouses. And one of those, of course, is the jobs that it can bring to a local community or city. And thinking about it in terms of cannabis, with 6,200 or 10,000 jobs peripherally or directly, is a really big impact, I have to believe. And I think also by you guys getting together and being successful together, you maintain those jobs, right? You maintain that economic growth, and you're not just, starting a cultivation facility and then failing because you're trying to do it alone, and then you don't have those jobs, and then people can say, look, that wasn't a real business, that wasn't a legitimate business. But by working together, you can make it really happen and sustain itself. I think that's awesome. I mean, do you know how many cultivators there are in Sacramento or in our region? Is that
I would say, I'm just going to go for indoor facilities. I think there's 25 like pretty significant operations.
What does that mean, significant?
I mean, I would
More
say
than 10,000 square feet
like
or
30,000 square feet or so.
Okay.
Pretty significant. And then I know there's some that are like really big. You have some large, but I mean, I'm talking like specific indoor. And then, I think there's about 100 licenses in Sacramento area.
Okay.
I could be totally wrong. I remember when it was going on, it was about that. So, you have smaller facilities. There's a lot of ways to maximize space these days. Obviously, you can, go vertical. You can throw super high PPFD at it. You can do whatever you you could go crazy if you have the power and the money.
We have not found the limit with cannabis with how much PPFD we can give it. I can't even believe it. It's just so hungry for, like, give me what you have and I'll eat it up.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how some of these recent test facilities are going to come out that I'm following right now.
Yeah.
Running in 1,800, 2,000. I mean, it's almost greenhouse quality, like lighting. So, yeah. So to answer you had one other question before, I believe, and it was something about, like, the size of the facilities, or how do you compete, right?
Yeah.
And I think you could fill as many spaces as you can with cannabis, right? But it really comes down to, so when it comes to the size of facilities and how do you compete, when I built some of our larger facilities, I was literally trying to compare it to, like, how do I compete with the greenhouse? Okay, what are greenhouses laid out? Greenhouses don't have walls in them, so why do I want to put a wall up in the middle of a greenhouse? Why not just do, big, larger rooms? There's lots of reasons why you wouldn't do that now that I've done them, but there's lots of reasons why I would do them.
You
right?
know that I'm going to make you come back to that and tell me why.
So I think when you're competitively, I think it just comes down to internally how you run your business, how you're able to manage your rooms, how energy efficient you can be, whether you're integrated LED, whether you've integrated nutrient cost, and the most importantly, the most important thing, environment.
Yes,
right?
You said it. I did not pay him to say that, everybody.
That's it. I'll tell you, I've become an expert on back end of mechanical units, and I shouldn't be.
I know. We're asking growers to basically be facility engineers now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I've been working on. I didn't know what a dead band was a couple years ago, but now
now you're an expert
I know
at it.
all about them and how to set them.
I was just talking to someone who said that you were on the phone with him and you're like changing the dead band settings while you're on the phone. I love that, but I also feel bad for you because if we were in a commercial building, if we were in an office building or a hospital, we wouldn't be asking doctors, right? We wouldn't be asking like the project managers in an office to be going up to the roof and changing out compressors or fiddling with the dead band and the set points of the HVAC equipment. But we're asking growers to do that. We're asking the operators to be engineers and facility maintenance guys. And I don't know, I think that's why I advocate a lot for more simple equipment when possible, because you guys want to be paying attention to the plants, not necessarily trying to troubleshoot an HVAC system. That shouldn't be your job, I don't think.
Right. When you say simple system, enlighten us all, please.
Oh, what a simple system is? Well, let's start with not a central plant.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen that one be built
yeah.
before. Absolutely.
We've designed those before. We've troubleshooted those before and optimized them, helped design them. And they're very complex systems, I mean, you have packaged units, right, for the most part, serving your rooms. And yeah, they're complex, but everything is sort of all together, and you have one dashboard that you can play with the settings. And yeah, it's complicated in that, but now imagine if you had chillers and boilers and pumps and a cooling tower and valves and an air handling unit. All of a sudden, it just becomes exponential what you have to operate and understand and set up and troubleshoot and optimize. So unless you are a very big facility, hundreds of thousands of square feet of canopy area, and have a facilities engineer on board, maybe two, to have a day shift and a night shift.
What, compressors don't take a night off?
Oh, yeah, right? Oh my God, talk about compressors. My God, we are asking them to do so much work, aren't we? It's interesting. Thanks for turning this back around on me, but packaged equipment is fairly simple, especially if it comes with an integrated control system that you can play with. And hopefully you have a good partner or a good rep in that manufacturer that will walk you through how to handle it, and you can call and troubleshoot or optimize with, or have an engineer like us who can help you with stuff like that. But we've talked to growers too who stick with really sort of light commercial or residential equipment that you can buy at Home Depot because, okay, it's going to fail, but at least I can then drive down the street and get a replacement, right? And so for some growers, that's their risk management, is knowing that they can replace a part really easily, even though they know it's going to fail every 6 months. So, I don't know if that makes your life simpler. For some growers, they might say that makes their life simpler. And other growers might say it's a nightmare because they need 30 fan coil units for, 1,000 square foot room, and they're replacing them all the time. So I don't know. Yeah.
I think you do know, which is good. And that's why we're here, I think. Part of it is experience is a lot, right? So what I would add to that is make sure you have all spare parts around, multiple compressors,
Yes.
every valve that you think you might need, and then an amazing mechanical contractor that is ready at any time of the day, because it always happens on Friday at 5 p.m. And or it happens on Saturday night or
the 4th
whatever.
of July or Christmas.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
we had like I remember at Amplified, it would always we'd always have an issue, and it would only happen on a holiday. And the issue may not have been mechanical related, but like it's just there's other issues. It's just like one of those things, right? Like cannabis doesn't take naps, so for it's just if lights go out doesn't mean everything's cool. If lights go out and your mechanical units go off, you've just created a swamp.
Yeah, it's almost like the machines know when it's a holiday. I think they're learning. We talk about machine learning. I think
so. I was talking with Jason Wade, who's our director of cultivation at Cultivated California, last week, and we were talking. I said we're gonna order I'm gonna order a couple new compressors. Like we just installed our last one, and I have a couple units. I have this one brand of units that seems to blow compressors for fun all the time, and I just happened to say to him, it's like, hey man, we have it for our bedroom. We probably shouldn't have these units for our bedroom, right? But we have them for our bedroom, and it's kind of oversized. And I was like, gosh, it'd be nice if we can actually just turn one of those units off. Maybe we should just turn one of those units off and just run in the fan only. It'll take a little, a little less energy, and it's already it's not a big enough load in that room. It's a bedroom. We want to try to raise the humidity in there a little bit, or not have it dehumidify so much. He called me an hour later and goes, hey man, you're never going to believe this. He's all, compressor number 2 blew in DH6, which is the unit for that room. So he's like, so I guess we're all good. Now we're down to one unit in that room. That one unit has 2 compressors on it, but the other 2 have already gone. So now I get to replace the whole skid. So keep parts on site and make sure it's so important to have a good mechanical contractor. One of the things when people ask me how are you building your grow room? What can you tell me one thing? And I say the same thing every time. Don't skimp on mechanical. It's just the science. It's like everything about it. If you want your days to go smoother, don't skimp on mechanical. Now I've bought super expensive mechanical units and they've given me lots of problems, but I know that at least it's high quality equipment, and we can work with that, and we can work through it. But just don't skimp on mechanical. Don't try to save a ton here and there. Just work with an engineer, get it sized correctly, and your life will be so much easier.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of our clients come to us after they've had pains with an existing facility, and now they're expanding, or they're going to be building a new facility in a new location, and they've realized that it's the HVAC system, it's the environmentals that should drive everything else in the design of their facility. It should drive the type of building they choose. It should drive the footprint of the building. It should drive how they irrigate, how they think about lighting, how they think about the placement of that lighting. If they're going to have a lot of property around the building, if they're going to have a strong roof, where they're going to put things. They realize, oh yeah, HVAC is important. Early, we're celebrating the 5th year anniversary of Dr. Greenhouse January 1st.
Bravo.
Which is super exciting. And I honestly had a project one time where they budgeted $25,000 for a control system and $5,000 for the HVAC system. And my first response was, and what are you going to control with that $25,000? Not the HVAC system, because you're probably going to Home Depot for a $5,000 system, and it's not going to do a whole lot for you.
Except they might have been on the right track, just not.
Maybe.
They didn't know what mechanical units cost for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, controls are important.
Yeah. Yeah, they understood that controls are important. How budgeting even has changed in terms of, lights are so apparent, right? We see lights, and people understand that light is important for photosynthesis, to grow plants. And I think a lot of people have sort of taken for granted how important the temperature and humidity and of course carbon dioxide is to grow those plants in combination with the lights you just gave them. If you just blast your plants with lights but you don't have the right temperature or CO2 level, you're hitting the accelerator in one place and you're hitting the brake in another place, and your plants just aren't going to grow very well or as well as they could.
Right. It's funny you say that because we have a term when we're growing, and Jason coined it. He says it's full gas pedal or like 75. He's like, no, this room we can only take a 75% gas pedal because an environmental issue, or plants didn't quite maybe take off how they were. But we always have that's kind of, we always refer to it as gas pedal. Where are we in that gas pedal? And
nice.
To run 100% gas pedal is you got to be humming, and things can change awful quickly. And we'll have a term that we use in our softball, or like any sports I play these days. It's 75%, 100% of the time. Maybe that has something to say with how you should be running your grow rooms, because most groups are just not dialed enough to run the 100%, all the time. You really got to have everything nailed down. But guys, people want to feed like it's 100, or they want to pump CO2 like it's just kind of like you got to find that balance, right? What works for your group. And if you have an environment that's super dialed, you can really get that gas pedal up there.
Yeah, I love that you're saying this, because every plant has its sort of optimized point for temperature, light, and CO2, where we know that increasing the CO2 increases photosynthesis, increasing the light level increases photosynthesis, increasing the temperature increases photosynthesis, but it all happens together. And then once you exceed some limit, then it starts to fall off. And what I see with cannabis growers is that they hit a really high PPFD. They're pumping the room with 1,500 parts per million of CO2, and then they're hitting the brake and only running at 73 or 75 degrees temperature. And I'm like, oh my God, like you have these big numbers over here, and then you're just slowing everything down with this temperature. But then I think about, well, yeah, the cannabis plant might be optimized at 80 or 82 degrees, but all the pains that you have, even that you've just described with the HVAC system, if you're running at 75 degrees and a compressor goes down, you have a little cushion there where the temperature can rise and you're not going to be heat stressing the plant before you can take an action. But if you're already running at 100%, you're already running at 80 or 82 degrees where it's most optimal, if a compressor fails, you are now in a stress condition immediately. And so I totally respect having this lower temperature just to give yourself a cushion, right? Just in case. But does that mean that maybe we should be at a slightly lower PPFD or CO2 so that you're optimized, so we're not just using energy or just using carbon dioxide just for the sake of it? But, this is where we need some research, where we need more than just sort of anecdotal evidence or just talk, right? And all of you guys have so much experience, and I just want to see that get out there more in sort of an experimental way, where we can actually point at a dot on a graph and say, this is, how well your plants are going to photosynthesize or yield or grow at these different conditions, and we just don't have that yet, unfortunately. So let me ask you, we're talking about all these different variables, and something that's really cool about your different facilities, and I've known you for about 4 years now. It was like in the first few months of me starting Dr. Greenhouse, and I visited a few of your different facilities a few different times. And one of the things that really sticks with me is that you have tried growing cannabis under different lights, different HVAC equipment, different substrates, different irrigation delivery methods. You've tried a lot of things. First, I want to ask, why did you try all these different things? And the follow-up question to that is, what did you like or not like about the different ways? Did you try something and then revert back to the original way or a different way that you were doing before?
So you want to know about Guinea Pig Farms, is what you're asking. So all right, why we change. It's because there isn't really a book for this when we started doing cannabis. Occasionally we could bring a professional like yourself in, but even this is before. And even then, there was just like very limited data. So we were the data. We were like the ones creating the data in indoor environments, okay? Or we're like specifically not outdoor. I mean, that's just a whole nother thing that I mad respect for and don't know anything really about. And I would probably not do well outdoors. But what I do know is indoors, we have to keep moving forward. We have to keep being progressive. We have some benefits here in Sacramento that have been awesome. So our local utility SMUD has been awesome to work with. Once they saw cannabis going into the mainstream, and they did not shy away. They actually were very good to work with. They actually helped us on a project that was kind of a grant thing. I'm not sure how they want to put it, but it was really interesting. They asked us to research some LED lighting, and so we did a one-on-one comparison of an LED room and a HPS room, and put mirrored data, put some AON units on the roof, matched the equipment and the lighting and everything, and Cadmus out of Oregon came and monitored it and got all this data back, and it was really, really rad. And I imagine they went to a lot of other growers and asked them if they would do this, right? But we were, for me personally, it was finally awesome to start, getting some recognition. It was a very validating point for our company to go through, to have our local utility company come to us and say, hey, we recognize like where this industry is going. We recognize you guys. We want to, see where you guys can take this. So how about go pick out some LED lighting? And so we went and picked out some LED. I basically just tore down an HPS room and rebuilt. It happened to be identical size of the other room, tore it down, contacted Fluence Bioengineering. I'd say they were one of the early companies in the industry and the LED market, so we grabbed them. It was really great to see this test side-by-side thing. Somebody broke into the place at the end of the test and stole half the crop, but
oh my God.
Regardless, we ran it, we learned a ton, SMUD learned a ton, and therefore, we kept just moving it. I honestly thought we were going to grab these LED lights, and I was like, hey, worst case scenario, I can use them for veg lights, right? Like, it's LED. I didn't really know about spectrum at that time and how that, but it didn't really matter. It was a great experience. It made us just keep moving, right? Like, keep changing, keep becoming different. I'm a builder, right? Like, so I've built lots of different grow rooms and homes and all kinds of stuff, and they all can be done a little bit different way. And I look at cannabis as such in its infancy that if you don't keep moving and trying different techniques, that you're just going to get stuck. And so I love it. I love it for morale and for like everybody that's involved in it. Just keep on finding like little differences. Now, what I have learned is don't do them on a whole room all the time, and if you can, find a smaller place to gamble. But honestly, we wouldn't be where we are without trial and error and a lot of error. And we've all burned a lot of crops up, and that is part of how we got where we're at. We know now a lot less. We know a lot of ways how not to burn a crop. So that is, and from what my friend associate JB says, they who burn crops the least, normally can sell your weed.
It's sort of a process of elimination, and I honestly wish that growers, farmers of every crop, this whole idea of like sort of competition versus collaboration. We see it in cannabis and we see it with vertical farming, that there's sort of this tension, right? It's like farmers and growers want to build themselves up and create this new industry and be legitimate, but they see each other as competition and don't want to share a secret sauce necessarily. We sign a lot of NDAs, people thinking that they're doing something different when they're not necessarily. But I wish that these indoor growers would, if nothing else, just say, don't do this. You don't have to say what is great and fantastic for you, if that's like your secret sauce or your secret recipe, or whether it's lights or nutrients or VPD or whatever. But even if you could just, with the process of elimination, just say, here's some lessons we learned. Don't do it this way. we're not going to tell you how to do it. We're just going to say what not to do. That I feel like would even help move our indoor agriculture industry forward more quickly. And you know, what's so cool about what you guys did with that SMUD study is it is still seriously one of the only case studies on cannabis cultivation in this country.
Wow.
I mean, and you guys did this, what, like 3 or 4 years ago?
That's right.
And we're still waiting for the next one to happen. I mean, you guys were so ahead of your time. SMUD was so ahead of their time. And I know that we have read those papers, those reports a couple of times. And, you know, there's things that we would do a little differently. They even recognize some of the problems with the study, probably one of which was not being able to get yield data because your facility was broke. By the way, I have to ask, was it the LED room or the high pressure sodium room?
It was the LED room. It was a bummer. It was the first room right when you walk in.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and it was only a small section, but like that's all you need to like screw up a data,
yeah.
Test, and that's what it was. And
Is it because the flower was so good that they're
that's probably what it was. No, it was smash and grab. They were in there and out of there in 20 minutes. It was just a mess. But no, like that, right away we saw something we didn't expect to see with those LEDs. We just saw different colors and kind of different terp profile. I'm not even sure if we called it terp profile back then. It was just, you just started seeing something, like, hey, I think these things might jam. Like, look at the size of these buds. Like, put your hand right here. Nothing's cold or nothing's hot, Like, it was a pretty cool experience to go through. And therefore, as I've been really monitoring the LED world and just looking at efficiencies in general with energy. Sacramento's a unique place. We have SMUD. We have a nonprofit that runs our local energy, so we're able to get very affordable power, and we have affordable real estate and really good people with good vibes. It's a good place to grow indoor cannabis.
That's awesome. Let me ask you a question just on the indoor production front. Why grow indoors? I mean, you mentioned that you probably couldn't grow outdoors if you tried, but I mean, just in general for the industry, why do you think there are so many indoor cannabis cultivation facilities? What are the benefits? What are the downsides of growing indoors? If you could grow outdoors, would you? Okay, that was a different question.
Yeah, that's a tough question because I'm sure if I grew up growing outdoors, that's how I want to grow.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a pretty rough use of energy. Granted, we do subscribe to green energy from SMUD, which is done by solar and then, or not solar, but wind and solar, I think is kind of how they do that. So you can pay a little extra and be part of that in Sacramento, which is kind of cool. So I would say number one reason that drives indoor cultivation in California is actually the consumer. So what we have done in California we've had super sophisticated set of indoor growers that have been producing indoor cannabis kind of in a medical market relatively freely for the last 15 years. Before that, you have lots of cities and stuff, and there's lots of open terrain, but it's just a difference. So what we've done, we've actually created a very sophisticated cannabis connoisseur in California.
Yeah.
So, I mean, anybody at this table, whether you smoke cannabis or not, could basically look at a nug and say that's different than that other one. And so that's what you get, right? You get like an outdoor, amazing cannabis, but just something about that indoor, creating that environment, stabilizing that environment, repeating that on an everyday basis, tweaking it just a little bit, having that ability to do that without an outside influence it just changes things. So we're, like a lot of businesses, are trying to create the same thing or enhance that great thing just a little bit every single time, right? But like really creating the same thing. And an environment outdoors, I imagine that can be kind of difficult. Indoors, we can do it. I will comment on, I do think there's a little bit too much indoor and outdoor cannabis production going on in California. I think we need to look at that, like as a and I think the state is, but they should have just been. Oregon went through this already, kind of bottomed out the market up there. A lot of businesses didn't make it. Same thing's going to happen here. Seems like they were just, if you had the right amount of money and you could just go out there and build whatever size farm you wanted to do, indoor or outdoor. And I saw this happen with other small industry businesses. They kind of cut each other out. Like I don't want to use too of a negative word here, but they basically all undercut everybody so much that they all end up going out of business, right? And I'm not saying cannabis is going to go and the businesses are going to do that, but it's just something to watch out for, right? Like, we should be regulating it in a way that we allow the businesses that are existing to be successful. I'm not asking for people not to be involved. I'm just saying I'm more worried about that overproduction than I am about like other growers outgrowing us or out better quality or anything else. I think that's just something that needs to be looked at very seriously in California.
I mean, we still have a pretty big black market here in California, I'm guessing, for a few reasons. Maybe shipping to other states illegally, or because taxes are so high. Like, if we were in Sonoma or Mendocino or Humboldt County, why would I go to a dispensary and spend $60 on an eighth when I can just buy it from my neighbor or grow it myself and get it for $30, right?
I have an answer for that.
Oh, please, yes.
For years and years and years, cannabis growers have been growing for their certain techniques for a long time, however they saw fit. Now, I'm not saying the state of California has got it perfectly right, but I would hesitate to smoke cannabis that's not tested. And honestly, I just, especially for someone who may have maybe reaching here. I don't want to. I know a lot of growers roll their eyes and everything. I had bad practices before I knew what I was supposed to be before I was given some guidelines. Okay, I've been a cultivator forever, and there was some shit I didn't know about. And if you're listening to this right now and you're a cultivator and you're saying that you've never had bad practice, you've never put something on there or had a bad, you're one of the rare ones, right? It's just we didn't know. We were putting things, using cannabis, using dirty genetics that may have had things in them that we didn't know about, getting clones from people. It's just whatever. There was no. So what has happened in California is it's really cleaned up the back end of the supply chain, which means like the flower that hits the market, like it's good. It's overly scrutinized cannabis, right? It's not like what they do in Canada, which is like radiated or something, but it's very clean. It's provided safe. It's been tested for molds that don't really matter to me, but like overly tested, right? Like and I think it's good because I know people are going to be getting safe product, and I never really thought about it back in the day like as much, but I do because I used to smoke whatever, right? And now I'm pretty cautious. I'm pretty cautious. Yeah, like I was at a festival like a couple years ago before COVID, and a guy was at a booth and he handed me a joint. And he said, "Here, man, it's just a joint." And I was like, "Oh, what was this?" Just asked him, "Where's it from?" And he's like, "I don't know." And I was just like, "Oh." He's like, "Well, you should ask that question next time." And he's like, "Why?" And I told him the same thing I just told you, but in a quicker version. He goes, "Oh my God, no one has ever told me that before." So it just, wow. And I'm not saying that. Just be careful. There's stuff on there that it acts different when these certain chemicals get put into cannabis. These are chemicals that are meant to be put on, even if they're organic, they're meant to be put on foods that you eat and consume and bypass, right? Like you eat a tomato and it goes through your body and it just kind of flushes everything out. When you smoke a pesticide and you actually put flame on it and it switches it into a carcinogen or something worse, a straight poison, you can have it could be probably not good for you in the long term. And I'm probably guilty of having that in my lungs as well because I wasn't paying attention. Sorry, that's my 2 cents on that.
I think everybody at this table is just sitting here with their jaw on the table. It's interesting that you bring that up because I did a webinar recently with a cannabis grower and a vertical farmer. And the cannabis grower starts talking about all the lab tests that you guys have to go through. And the vertical farmer who grows lettuce, right? And his jaw you can see like just a gape. And he's like, we don't have to go through any of that testing for lettuce. For what people are consuming every single day. Every single consumer is eating a salad or a hamburger or a sandwich or, you know, it in their burrito or whatever. And he's like, how do you, I mean, he literally asked, how do you guys do that? Like, how do you guys incur that cost? He was just amazed. He'd never heard this before with the cannabis industry. And it's just, it's so interesting because, you know, I've touted how cannabis has driven so much in terms of technology development for indoor farming in general, whether it's LED lighting or HVAC systems or irrigation or controls, because you guys have the money to invest in new technologies. Where if you grow a lettuce plant, you don't have a lot of money, right? You don't have, you don't have a big bottom line. You have really thin margins there, but it's, you know, cannabis has helped drive improvements in these technologies, and it makes me wonder how much like track and trace of cannabis, how much the lab testing of cannabis is going to trickle down or trickle through our food system in general.
Oh, wow.
Right? I mean, it's so fascinating. So yeah, look out. I've been really impressed with some of our clients, both in, you know, traditional horticultural crops and cannabis, who have their own on-site lab testing, because they want to know before they send it out to a lab if it has E. coli or if it has powdery mildew, because either they're going to destroy it or they're going to, you know, treat it or let some chemical off gas first, or, you know, whatever it is, and let the product settle or decide that they're going to destroy it before they get a negative test. And that really impresses me that growers are being very driven by the quality that they put out to the market, right? First to the lab, and then what's going to get out to the consumer. Because just like with cannabis, with every agricultural crop, as soon as there's an E. coli outbreak on spinach, that doesn't just affect the field spinach growers, that's going to affect the indoor spinach growers, like the whole industry. And so whatever you can do to prevent an outbreak is going to help everyone, or at least not hurt everybody. So we've spent a lot of time, and I really appreciate this conversation. I feel like we could talk about a lot of different topics. What have you seen in the industry overall through your network here, or just, you know, countrywide, statewide, North America-wide, internationally, that creates some optimism for the future? What are you excited about developing in the industry? Where do you see it going? Like, what gets you excited?
All right. So what gets me excited about the industry? I feel like most of the excitement already happened, but no, I mean, it is. It's been It's been a really exciting last 5 years. We all came from underground, roughly, somewhat underground cultivation and everything else that we're doing to getting licensed and bank accounts and all kinds of stuff, right? You know, I know that's a big word, right?
Talk about banking at all.
So I mean, and so what? I guess that leads me into the next thing is now having the rest of the nation and the rest of all these businesses that we work with just to be part of this, right? So I remember, I had a alarm company back in the day, with dispensary day, and they called me one day and they're like, sorry, we can't service your account anymore. And this is like a normal, like you've heard every day, this alarm company, right? And we're just like, you can't put an alarm and like just service our alarm. He's like, yeah, came from corporate, like we can't work with cannabis companies anymore. And you're just like, oh, yeah. Another door shut. So I guess I constantly have had that happen. Business, bank accounts, blah, 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 right? Having to work within our own ecosystem, right? Like finally starting to open up, like we're like accepted in the ag industry a little bit now, right? Like, so we're kind of legitimized by those guys. Businesses around us are open to doing work. I mean, we haven't broke into everything, you know, but I'm really excited to see how we integrate as a normal businesses and are treated the same. So I will also say, and we're also taxed the same, right? Because if you look at our town, our Sacramento, we all signed up to get into this. We would take whatever they gave us at that time. And, reflecting on it now, it was great opportunity, but the amount we pay for local licensing fees, the amount we pay for state licensing fees, and then now 4% on everything, and then the people get hit at the back end in the retail. It's just now it just comes down to we just need to be treated like everyone else, like a lot of the other businesses. I think we've kind of broke through, made let's face it, we paid the extra 4% and all these other things so they could convince people to vote for it, right? Like, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take all this, it's just a little bit, it's a little bit much, and as the industry starts to tighten up, we just need to associate and make sure we're helping get this down to normal. I'm not saying don't pay anything, I'm just saying it's gonna tighten up for everyone. And we need to make sure we're all on the same page. So the association, I will say again, I'm not asking you to join a certain association at all, but I'm just saying associate with your grower, your local businesses, or your businesses that you work with, manufacturing, everybody else, because we always have to get on the same page so we can make this thing work and have the same message.
I mean, on that note, Sacramento, I feel like is so special in that the growers seem to have a really tight network, or at least a lot of the growers. You guys collaborate, you guys get together, you mentioned the word lobby, you work together towards certain issues. I mean, why do you think that is? What is special about Sacramento, and how can cannabis growers in other sort of regions emulate what you guys are doing here in Sacramento?
I think Sacramento started with small indoor grows, okay? And there was this weird network of people that you kind of connected with, and it's also a small city. We're bigger than a town now, right?
Yeah.
So I think what happened, these small network of growers, some of them got an opportunity to go into the commercial cannabis world, right? And someone always knows someone in Sacramento, and that helped with basically creating more of a flow through the different businesses. Granted, I think a lot of the information in our industry in Sacramento for cultivators didn't share directly from grower to grower, but it actually transferred through contractor to contractor, because
Really?
Yeah, so, and my contractors, I'm not going to name them, but a lot of the mechanical, electrical guys in town have been doing all the main cultivators forever, right? They see what works, and they don't want to see their clients fail, right? So in a way, they're always going to guide you to the right thing or get better at what they do and show, hey, we're doing this now. So I would say that was a huge network that probably's never recognized. So thank you, the guys I've worked with forever, and you guys know who you are. It's been a real super helpful. Granted, we do have growers that do connect. There's a high level of indoor cultivation been happening in Sacramento for 20 plus years, and I think that has a direct influence. And also just being able to share those genetics and share that technique and stuff like that has been super helpful.
Another undervalued resource, right?
Mechanical contractors, mechanical electric contractors, you pretty much don't skimp on those guys. They're the glue for sure, and they'll probably teach you something about how to build a grow. So consult with them before you just consult with an architect, right? Always. Like what you said earlier, mechanical, people are just oh, I'm just going to put units wherever. No, you can't, because some of them weigh a lot, and you can't put them on roofs, and some need to be, just however you want to do it. You just got to look at your property, whatever you're trying to grab or build, and look at all the variables. So I would say that's the first person you want to call, because mechanical equipment is also big and bulky, and it can be small and out of your way as well, but that's a perfect scenario.
Yeah, I know we really like it when we're working on projects that have a mechanical contractor on board early in the project, because they can help answer some questions about constructability, about accessibility to the equipment, and are a great resource. Great people to work with in general. Okay, you know what? Here, I'm going to ask you this question first. What do you love about cannabis?
Well, that's not on a notebook. So what I love about cannabis in the very beginning was just the culture that brought me around. People are attracted to like-minded people, kind people. Just I think that's a big part of why I loved cannabis, because it would put me around that. I would like to say I did it for probably survival purposes when I was young, but there was something more there, it's just Friday night I would be fine going and chopping a crop down rather than going out and hanging out with going to bars or whatever. It's just just different, it's something I've always just really been attracted to. I love the different ways it grows and smells, the different ways it reacts when you put it in different environments. I like the way it makes me feel. That's pretty good. I like that it's all the different varieties. Think about if you were to you can't do this with any other plants, really. All the stuff we do with it. It's and I love how it's pushing everything, right? So cannabis right now growing indoors. You get companies like all these, Fluence and Phillips and all these guys now that are investing so much money into LED. There's only one reason they're investing money into LED, and there's only one industry that makes it spend money. So we really were able to push this into, and the benefit, the byproduct is going to be what it does for the supply chain of food and different things we look at. All of a sudden now you have vertical farms that are able to produce in tight spaces and urban cultures, all this good stuff. You have all that benefit that's going to come from it, and all this competition from these big companies putting all these lighting together. It's going to make it eventually affordable, and second gen stuff is going to be really affordable for all kinds of different options. So I think I like that part about it, and I already said people, right? I do like people.
It tends to be good people. It tends to attract good people.
Yeah, it does, and then the ones that don't sure stand out. I don't like to bring up anything bad. It just seems if you have a bad rap in the cannabis industry, everybody, it doesn't take long for everybody to figure it out, you just don't make the cut, and people don't want to work with you anymore. So it seems to kind of work itself out a little bit, thin out. What else do I love about cannabis? I love that it allowed me to be a commercial grower and now a business enthusiast, right? I guess that was how I call it, because really it's business. We have company with payroll and health insurance and all kinds of stuff, and we're legitimate, and the dream came true, really.
You've been doing this for a long time, even just on your own. I don't even know what kind of question you can ask about cannabis in a way. I want to ask you, when did you grow your first cannabis plant? But I'm is that a quagmire kind of question? Am I allowed to ask that question?
You ask my parents. They would tell you.
Okay.
But it was
That's
literally awesome. So a friend of mine had a cannabis, or had some, like I told you earlier, had some cannabis around them in their backyards and stuff. And so when I was 15, 16 years old, just kind of saw how it was growing and saw, just whatever. So I was fascinated by it. Didn't even smoke it at that time. Just fascinated by there's this thing. There was this, I don't know, secrecy about it and whatever else. So that's what I was attracted to as a kid. Sure. So I went and bought a marijuana, Ed Rosenthal's Bible.
Did you?
The marijuana handbook, I believe.
Nice.
Marijuana's Guide's handbook. So yeah, and that became. I just started researching a bunch of information on that, and so I got some seeds from the plant, my buddy's plant, and I took a black light. This is what kids know. I took a black light, put it in my closet, and put a seed in a pot.
I remember those days.
And friggin' tried to and I was why is this thing not growing? And then my dad rolled in one day and was what is in your closet? I think I was 16 or 15 at that time. You know, I think they were cannabis connoisseur, or they smoked a little bit of cannabis.
Enthusiast,
right? But you know, geez, that was in the 90s, and things were like really sketchy and everything else. So imagine they, must have been pretty difficult back then. But yeah, so that was kind of the first thing, and
And then
I think I moved out. Moved into an apartment immediately. Again, we were not in the country. We're in the urban Sacramento, California, and so I had an apartment. And matter of fact, Jason and I, we like put a 600 watt or a 1,000 watt in a closet and built a aeroponic little thing.
Did you?
Yes, my first thing was aeroponics,
Yes,
which was wild. It was a 2x4 tray with misters and a reservoir and GH, and we had these little cubes, and we'd mist these cubes, and the roots would come flying out and just hang in suspension in air. And that was my first experience cultivating my own cannabis. And they were these cool little, the strains, gosh, I wish I had them still. They were like the all-time classics. Basically, it was like an aeroponic thing, and started there and built hundreds of different things from that.
Why don't
concept.
you grow aeroponics now?
So,
Would it grow a very big plant, do you think?
if you have chillers and the right, flowable water is kind of dangerous. That's what I've noticed. It's just like you got to keep things real clean, right? If you're going to have like open tray irrigation or ebb and flow or whatever else, you have to have a real clean environment in a commercial atmosphere. It's better to keep your water contained, from what I can say, like just from seeing how pathogens move around and different things.
Yeah. Do you garden? Do you grow any other plants at home or anything? Or do you just dream of tomatoes?
I've always grown tomatoes and cucumbers and vegetables in my backyard.
Okay.
And
it is Sacramento,
my dad
right?
did, and my nanny did. Like everybody, like generation-wise. Unfortunately, the house I'm in right now doesn't have it has some redwoods around it.
Oh,
those
too much shade.
Those just jack up any real farmer's dreams right there. Redwoods, they're not very good. They just block too much light.
So I want to ask you a question from two different perspectives. What would you tell your younger self? Like, what have you learned over the years of growing cannabis commercially that you wish you could tell your younger self, or tell maybe a new grower? But I also kind of want to ask, because you've been kind of tinkering with growing this plant, since you were a teenager. What do you think your younger self would tell you today about growing the plant?
I would say designate an R&D location. Don't create your location to be an R&D location. Literally, if you want to try something, build 2 rooms, run your one room the way you want it, run the other one however you can. Integrating those techniques, trying new strains, doing whatever, all that stuff is what I'm talking about. And then really like pushing, moisture levels and substrate and different things like that. Just keeping that separate, right? Like just don't mess with that with your regular bread and butter, because it'll, you don't
know what you're going to get.
I still doesn't.
Right?
I don't know if just saying, because like things were tough. Like it was hard. I used every bit of money that I had, that I earned, into reinvesting into, doing it over again and living harvest to harvest. And every grower knows what that means, and that's what you had to do, is you lived harvest to harvest. So that's one of the things I would say. I feel like I like the way we failed a lot, right? So like those are like most of the places people would change most of their fail points, right? Like I screwed up on this, I screwed up on that. But it's like every time, again, we screwed up, we learned a lot. And I know that gets old. People like say that's a shitty way to go through it, or not the way to learn, but I just think that's the
best way to learn, is from failure.
For me, it's what I felt the most, and I always let whoever I was working with, whoever was the growers or my partners or whatever it was, like not wanting to come down on someone super hard for flooding, 5,000 square feet of with
wow,
2,000 gallons of water. It's like, learn from it. Like, what can it happens, like, so, torching a crop, spraying something, the lights on, whatever it may have been, all right, log that in.
Yep.
Like, do you feel it? Okay, cool, because that hit your pocket and my pocket, and not only that, just like our success of our next, run is going to be better for not having to make that same mistake twice. So I'm pretty comfortable with most of the decisions and failures we've had over time. Everything's kind of
Your
learning.
employees are lucky to have you, I
Awesome.
would say. Yeah. Have you found that finding good growers or good employees has been hard? I feel like especially, in agriculture in general, there is sort of this growth of interest in farming and locally grown and having connection to your food and to the, what you're consuming. But there's a huge bottleneck in terms of finding experienced or educated people who can grow a plant, who sort of apply the scientific method where they try something, observe, and make a decision based off of that. Have you found it challenging to find good growers and good help in your operations, or have you?
I think it's gonna get more difficult. Yeah, I do. A lot of it comes from, I think finding good team members is basically built around an ecosystem. You look within that ecosystem first, right? And you vet them through everyone you know, and that's how, we're fortunate enough to have that ability to find talent like that, right? Like, that's gonna run out, right? It seems that it may be more difficult to find people now than it was originally when we were starting to build up. I just think that, you have all these new businesses popping up in Sacramento, and that's mainly our talent pool comes from, and you're gonna have competition. You're gonna have people offering different solutions and benefits and things like that. It's just like any industry, it's just gonna start getting, people are gonna go after what they can get, and I totally agree with them. So I wanna stay on it, make sure we have good ability to, share with our team and make sure we're not making anybody feel like they're not appreciated, so that's it. So we gotta stay competitive, that's really what it'll come down to. But I've been real lucky. We've had roots here in Sacramento for a long time, so that's where I think it's helpful. If I was popping into a new city, I'm sure it'd be more difficult.
It'd be hard, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've started asking all our growers in an official or unofficial capacity, what metric do you use to measure productivity?
10 pounds a life.
10 pounds, oh God, please don't say that.
So for me, it's quality.
Quality.
That's the key. Measuring the productivity is kind of a difficult thing. I look at it, I weigh a lot of factor on making sure everybody is set up for success, right? In a way, a lot of it comes back down to me making sure I'm putting the right systems in place, the right people in place, and a lot of times I haven't, right? So I haven't always put the right mechanical equipment in. So we get to dance around that and the environmental thing for a while. Sometimes it comes down to money, sometimes it comes down to just like making a decision, right? And so
I imagine different strains are productive in different ways too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all about the decisions we make on the front end to be more successful in the back end, right? So productivity can be measured in so many different ways. I'm gonna always push for quality over quantity. I'm gonna look at making sure staff is appreciated, everybody involved in it is happy and successful. I'm gonna look at just putting those systems in place to make sure that we can be successful. I'm going to look at, unfortunately, it's probably the worst part about me and why I'm not surrounded by CFOs and COOs and all that stuff is because I don't at this time focus as much on monetizing of this business or how much money we can get for a certain product.
So the question I should have asked you then is, how do you measure success?
Yeah, that's just happiness, like that. I know that's a cheesy, cliche thing to say. You probably could ask me that in 5 years, it might be different, but for right now, we're really happy to be where we're at, and again, super excited that the industry has become legitimized and that we're able to go to events and sponsor things and have parties that we can have like our different industry associates around. I think that's all part of the path, and now being just surrounded by even like people to help us get to where we need to be, right? Which is just keep moving the needle, keep changing, keep producing like really nice indoor cannabis, and how to do it for the most efficient and highest quality.
So you're not a grams per square foot per year kind of guy?
I have not yet done the grams per square foot per yield per
day or year
per day
harvest.
We look at overall productivity of a room in a whole. There's so many different ways to light a room. There's lots of different ways, size of plants, how many plants, what type of lighting, if you're stacked, if you're not. I mean, there's
so true.
There's lots of ways to look at it. We're just looking at it, doing the best we can, and again, producing high quality cannabis. Because like really, I can grow really high yields of some hay stuff and not develop the relationships I'm looking to develop. We grow high quality indoor cannabis. Those are the people we work with. Those are the customers at the end of the line that are buying the product. Those are the relationships we have built and we want to maintain. And if we have a crop that doesn't hit that standard, puts us out of sync, right? It puts the whole chain out of sync. So we have to really work on just making sure we're producing quality all the time. And that quality thing can be a danger, or that quantity thing can be a danger, because if you're chasing it too much, you're bound to switch and lose quality.
You become a commodity. We don't want to become soybeans and corn, I don't think.
If you're a CEO or a CFO listening to this podcast of some company, you probably don't want to listen to me. My strategy is a little bit different, and a controller would probably not appreciate what I'm saying, but I like the avenue we're in, and it's what we do, and it's what we've always done, and I don't want to switch.
What is so challenging about quality, I mean, when we talk about quantity or yield, it's a very quantifiable number. Right? It's grams, it's pounds, it's like getting on a scale and there's a number staring back at you. But what that doesn't get at is the quality characteristics, the terpene profile, the secondary metabolites, the color, how it makes you feel, how it tastes, I mean, even with non-cannabis products, right? Like, you have a red oak leaf lettuce. If you don't have the right lighting, you just have an oak leaf lettuce. It never turns red, and so you get these secondary metabolites that make it something special. But that specialness is also subjective, right? It's harder to quantify. I think, again, cannabis is sort of on that leading edge of quantifying quality by having these lab tests and measuring terpene profiles and THC and CBD content and all these things that are quantifying quality, which is really hard to do in general. And although I might like really spicy arugula, someone in Ohio might not like spicy arugula. They might want it really bland and mild. And so what I think is high quality here might be spit out by somebody else. So so quality is just hard to quantify or to make everybody happy, but more of something? Yeah, I'll take more of that, right? I mean, we're Americans. More is better. Bigger is better. Blah.
That's right, that's it.
Blah.
Yeah, I guess we're more like this brewery, big sexy brewery here in Sacramento. We're more about the quality, I think.
Yeah, I'm totally on the same page with you. So, Steve, what do plants crave?
Plants crave everything.
Ooh, everything.
They love light, water, carbon, nutrients, and the environment to optimize all the components.
Do they like to be sung to?
So, we don't currently play Beethoven or any sort of
or Metallica
to the plants, but I've had some growers that I've worked with, and some guys I've worked with currently that believe that cannabis sure does like they like a rhythm, and they like
really?
That frequency,
vibration.
Good
vibes.
Those are very hard things to quantify. I'm sure the benefit of this whole thing going legal is someone's going to be able to do a test on that one day. and we will find out if the good vibes make the weed better.
Or maybe you actually have to sing or talk to them, because then you're really just blowing carbon dioxide on them.
Okay, that's also true. Yeah, the carbon dioxide singing is, that is good. Yeah, that's right. If you just hang out in your grow room all night long, dude,
With an
tons of
open
CO2.
keg, just
Oh, yeah.
all the CO2.
Just gassing off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Plants crave everything.
Plants crave everything. Plants crave, other than those things, plants crave attention and also being left alone.
Like every living being, right?
Yep, they need their time away from the people. Stop touching me. I'm good. Let me do my thing.
Do you think plants are introverts or extroverts?
Interesting. I think they're extroverts because I believe they communicate quite a bit with each other. I mean, if you think of trees, right? That trees talk to each other, right? Sure. And they're all sending out pheromones and different things all the time. Now, they say crop plants are the dumb plants of the industry, if you haven't heard that before.
No.
But or not the industry, but of the
the
world.
Plant world.
They say, like cloned plants, or plants that have been used for
domesticated or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are the I don't believe that, and I think they're extroverts because I think they are constantly working in unison and they need a little love.
Don't we all?
I think so.
Well, with that, cheers.
All right, cheers.
Thank you so much, Steve.
That was
it
super
has
fun.
been a pleasure knowing you and working with you these last few years. We don't have a lot of projects in California or in Sacramento for that matter. And so it's really great to know someone like you who's pushing the industry, being innovative, working with others to make it more legitimate and more successful, and I just appreciate everything you brought to the industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and absolutely, I appreciate you for everything you're bringing to the industry. Thank you for taking the crossover 5 years ago, jumping into the cannabis world. It's been super helpful for everyone, and we appreciate you being here with us.
Awesome. All right, well, happy Friday.
Heck yeah.
All right.
That was Dr. Nadia Sabeh interviewing Steve Squaglia of Amplified Farms for our series, What Plants Crave. Tune in next week for our next episode. Dr. Sabeh will be speaking to Michelle Keller of Living Greens Farm. I'm Dennis Wadan, and this has been The Doctor Is In with Dr. Nadia Sabeh. Thank you for listening.